Our next guest is chair of the all-important Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where he plays a critical role in shaping U.S. foreign policy in Congress. Senator Jim Risch of Idaho has a long track record of working across the aisle to craft and pass legislation that strengthens the U.S.-Israel alliance and ensures that Israel can defend itself by itself. In just a few short months under his leadership as chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Risch has made his presence known, leading the effort to pass S-1, the bill we just discussed to authorize aid to Israel and combat efforts to delegitimize and isolate Israel around the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage a great friend of the pro-Israel movement, Senator Chairman Jim Risch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great to see you. Please have a seat. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for being here. You are new in this role as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, obviously a critical committee when it comes to the U.S.-Israel relationship. First, how are you approaching this new role, specifically as it relates to national security and the U.S.-Israel relationship?
Well, you know, over a lifetime, I've really developed a system, if you would, for handling these. I started my career as a county elected official and spent almost 30 years in our state senate, most of it leading it. I was lieutenant governor, and now I've been here for 10 years, and I've been on both the Foreign Relations Committee for 10 years, and I'm the number 2 person on the Intelligence Committee and been there for 10 years. So I'm not a stranger to this stuff. So the way I'm going to approach this, and I've already approached it, is what you do is you go out and assess the battlefield and see what you have, obviously construct a plan and then execute a plan. Pretty simple. Unfortunately, in this particular instance, a lot of times things are out of your hands as far as what you want to do. That is, the system drives you instead of you driving it. So as we go forward into this 21st century, I'm convinced that China is going to be a real challenge for the United States. I think the 21st century, unlike the 19th, but very much like the 18th, 17th, 16th, is going to be a competition between great powers. And China is rising. Russia is not necessarily rising, but very aggressive. And those are going to have to be addressed. Obviously, the Middle East has always been a focus for the United States of America. I intend to keep it that way. As far as other things are concerned, Venezuela has come up just recently, and we're going to have to deal with that. I want to approach this as a bipartisan exercise. It should be. We're all Americans. When it comes to foreign relations, bipartisanship is incredibly important.
And the very first bill that you managed on the floor as chairman included authorization for security assistance to Israel. Why is supporting Israel so important to you?
Well, S1 is obviously a very important bill, and it's got really several different components to it, and they really should all be looked at. But look, we've had a 70-year relationship with Israel, and we have cultivated an indelible bond between the United States and Israel. We closely cooperate in economics, business, scientific research, and innovation, and we also cooperate on many, many governmental operations. Israel has deep shared values with the United States when it comes to beliefs about human dignity, about freedom of worship, freedom of expression, and all the kinds of things that really make up the core of human rights for us. And so S1 was about all of that. It was also about supporting our close friend Jordan and about holding the Assad regime accountable for the acts that have taken place in Syria. And lastly, and finally, we need to mention, very importantly, the elephant, well, in this case, the donkey in the room, and that is the part that dealt with BDS legislation. BDS is pure, unadulterated racism. There is no place for that in America. The Jewish people have been really discriminated against for centuries. BDS is an attempt by people to continue that. It's wrong, it's un-American, it shouldn't be allowed, and this bill addresses that. And I hope when you descend upon the Hill tomorrow, remind the people on the other side, that bill passed with 73 out of 100 votes in the United States Senate. It's right there, it's on the table. Tell my friends in the House, pick that bill up, pass it, and don't use BDS as an excuse to get out of passing that bill.
And from the strategic perspective, there are those voices who argue that supporting Israel is not in America's interest. You've been a forceful advocate against them. How do you respond?
Well, look, Israel is absolutely critical to the interests of the United States of America in the Middle East. We all know from a geographical standpoint what a dangerous neighborhood that it finds itself in. It is the only democracy in the Middle East. It is our best friend there. And it absolutely is important that we have that relationship with such an important actor in such an important place. We all know what Iran's been doing, combating their behavior is incredibly important, and our partnership with Israel in doing that is most important.
I want to pick up on that point about Iran and the region, given Iran's nefarious influence in Syria and Iraq, in Yemen and Lebanon. We see Iran advancing its missile program. What can and should the United States be doing to address Iran's malign influence in the region?
Well, we've already done something really important. I spent a good share of the 8 years before Trump fighting JCPOA. I was very vocal about it. A lot of us felt strongly about it. When President Trump became president, I personally lobbied him to get out of the JCPOA, and I couldn't be more proud of our president in doing that. I argue with our European friends all the time. I don't get it, and I tell them I don't get it, why they'd want to hold hands under the table with these despots when they should be joining us to fight the things that Iran is doing, not the least of which is the sponsorship for terrorism. The Europeans have as much of an interest in that as we do. But in any event, we're going to continue to bring our pressure on Iran. Last week, the administration sanctioned an additional 31 individuals and entities involved in the regime's various programs that are unlawful. One of the most underreported things, I think, and that I hear about through various sources, is how bad conditions are on the ground in Iran. Look, America is still the 800-pound gorilla on the face of this planet when it comes to financial matters. Our sanctions are really, really important. They are having a great effect on Iran, and we need to continue those sanctions. We need to continue to prosecute those sanctions. And eventually, that is going to undermine the regime there enough that the Iranian people themselves are going to rise up and do something about what the horrible things that the regime is doing. We ought to support them. The other important thing I think about Iran is the demographics in Iran. I forgot the exact statistics, but there's a tremendous percentage of the population that's under 30 years old, and they have a different view of the world generally than the current regime in Iran. That's one of the lights at the end of the tunnel I really think we'll see.
And one place where Iran has enormous influence is in Syria, obviously on Israel's northern border. We saw the announcement this week from the administration about the Golan Heights, and wanted to get your perspective on that, Chairman, tonight.
Well, look, again, Syria has been a real problem for us, and it dovetails in with the problem that we have with Iran. Iran is causing tremendous difficulty in Syria, and I applaud the President's decision to leave limited ground forces in Syria, and I encourage our European allies to make similar contributions to that. It would be a very, very bad thing if Iran was able to construct an overland road through Syria to connect with Lebanon and with Hezbollah who we all know is merely a puppet of the Tehran administration.
And Senator, Mr. Chairman, there's a perennial debate in foreign policy about the proper role of the United States. You know, should we be more involved? Should we be less involved? Should we follow our interests? Should we follow our values? Should we be more parochial, more global? How should we work to advance our shared interests at this critical time?
Well, first of all, I think one of the things that struck me when I first started 10 years ago on the Foreign Relations Committee is really how big this planet is. It's shrinking, obviously, because of communications and transportation, but virtually every region has some kind of a problem. The United States cannot be the policeman of the world. Having said that, we also have to pick the places where American interests are very important. And when they are important, we need to step up. We need to step up aggressively, and we need to do something about it. And I think that the United States should continue to promote our values, to promote our shared vision for prosperity and for human rights all over the world.
Thank you very much. All Americans are grateful that this man is the new chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Thank you, Chairman Jim Risch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.